Hey, good afternoon and Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to our first webinar of 2026. All information contained herein is provided solely for educational purposes. It is not intended as a substitute for professional or legal advice. Should you decide to act upon any information contained in this presentation, you do so at your own risk. While the information posted has been verified to the best of our abilities, we cannot guarantee that there are no mistakes or errors. This is the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality. Today, we are presenting the 2025 Hazardous Waste Annual Reporting Webinar. We will be muting everyone except for the speaker. However, just as a precaution, go ahead and keep yourself muted individually as well. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the Q&A option. Type in your questions and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. There will be a poll at the end of this webinar to provide your feedback, so please complete before logging off. I would like to say that this webinar is just 1 hour. I was made aware that the notification said 1:30 to 4:30. It will not be that long, so you can enjoy the rest of your afternoon after this 1 hour webinar. We have 3 presenters today, all from the Waste Notifications and Reporting Group in the Office of Environmental Services. Our first presenter is Jennifer Williams. Jennifer has worked as an environmental scientist for almost 5 years. She is a United States Army veteran and has a BS degree in biology with a concentration in biochemistry and a chemistry minor. Our next presenter will be Catherine Cooper. Catherine is also an environmental scientist and has been with the agency for almost 3 years. She has a bachelor's degree in biology. Our last speaker is Kenneth Edwards. Kenneth is also an environmental scientist and has been with the agency for almost 4 years. He also has a degree in biology with a concentration in marine life and a minor in sociology. We will begin our webinar today with Jennifer, and she will be followed by Catherine, and then closing out with Kenneth.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 2025 Hazardous Waste Annual Reporting Webinar. So the topics we'll discuss will include who has to submitting the annual report, and we'll also walk through submitting electronically, the HW1 form, and the RCRA Subtitle C reporting forms. The department will continue to use RCRA Info for the electronic option of reporting. You can find links to the forms and RCRA Info at our website. Contact info will also be provided for the Waste Notifications and Reporting Group, the Surveillance Regional Offices, and Small Business Assistance. A slide of helpful online resources will also be provided. Submit your questions at any time using the questions and answers button, and note the specific form and or section of your question. And all questions will be answered at the end. Now, if you have specific waste questions, such as waste management or classification, those questions will be forwarded to our surveillance regional offices for a response, because waste notification and reporting does not normally answer those types of questions. This will be recorded and posted at a later date on our website and YouTube channel later for easy review. So who has to submit the report? A facility that met the definition of a large quantity generator, a facility that treats, stores, disposes, or recycles hazardous waste on site, or ship the hazardous waste off site to a TSD facility, and a facility that receives waste from off-site generators. If you are currently or were at one point in the year registered as a large quantity generator, the report is required. Also, if large quantity amounts of hazardous waste were generated, but the site's generator status was not updated to LQG, the report is still required. The EPA requires the hazardous waste report to be submitted for every odd numbered year, which is called the biennial report. Louisiana is an annual reporting state and requires the hazardous waste report to be submitted every year. This year will be a biennial reporting year. The report can be submitted electronically using RCRA info and is highly encouraged. Reports are due March 1st. You do not have to submit a hard copy if you submit electronically. If you start to submit electronically but decide to submit using the paper forms, the electronic submission must be fully deleted in RCRA info before the paper submittal can be entered. There must be at least one person with a certifier or site manager industry user account in order to submit the report through RCRA info. If you submit DMRs electronically through CDX, you can use those credentials to log into RCRA info. The HW1 form and the site identification form are interchangeable. You want to make sure all applicable forms are completed and up to date. Check for the original signature in the certification section and mail the completed forms. There are 2 addresses listed due to issues with FedEx not accepting the PO box address, so our physical address can be used as another option to mail the paper forms. Registering as an industry user, we'll go over that first. Again, every site must have at least an industry user as a certifier or site manager. You want to access the RCRA info home screen using rcrainfo.epa.gov. Links to RCRA info are available on the hazardous waste webpage. On the RCRA info home screen, you will either sign in with your credentials or register. Now, users are required to have a login.gov account and a RCRA info industry user account to log in. If you do not have a RCRA info industry user account, the system will prompt you to create your credentials here. You'll enter your RCRA user ID and email and agree to the terms, and then continue to login.gov. If you do not have a login.gov account, once you create one, you will be returned to RCRA info automatically to complete registration. If you have a login.gov account, once you're logged in, it will return you to RCRA info. If you do not have a RCRA industry user account, you'll register, enter your name, choose your questions and answers, and add your organization's information. Once RCRA info registration is complete, it will redirect you to the login.gov screen to log in. And now we'll discuss connecting to the facility and requesting permissions. So requesting a new site ID is when a facility is applying for an EPA ID number, and Louisiana has not opted into RCRA ID. So to submit the report, to request permissions, I should say, you want to click on Select Existing Site. You can search by the EPA ID number or the site name, state, and zip code. You'll click Search. And then once the information for the facility pops up, you'll click the box and request access. So for site management, you can view, edit, and sign the report. Site managers can also approve other users for access. Annual report and biennial report. You can choose between viewer, prepare, or certifier. A viewer can only look at the report. Prepare can only enter and edit the data in the report. And a certifier can edit, sign, and submit the data in the report. Since Louisiana requires reports every year, you will need to be approved for the annual report and biennial report. The site manager or certifier must be an authorized representative that's responsible for the overall operation of the site or an operational unit. For example, the plant manager or the superintendent. In LDEQ, we don't usually approve consultants for certifiers or site managers. So be mindful when you're requesting those permissions. This is also where to request e-manifest permissions in reference to the e-manifest final rule. As of January 22nd, 2025, large and small quantity generators are federally required to register and maintain an account with Site Manager or e-manifest certifier permissions to meet the new regulatory changes made by the final rule. This table does summarize those permissions levels. So now RCRA Info will send an email once the permissions requested have been accepted or denied. We recommend facilities have more than one person with permissions. If one person has site manager permissions and they leave your company, the permissions request for that facility will continue to be sent to that person's account for approval. We don't know that the personnel no longer works for your company unless you notify us to remove those permissions. Now, at a later date, RCRA does forward those requests to LDEQ for review, but to decrease the time frame to receive your access, please notify waste notifications and reporting as soon as that site manager is no longer employed with your company. Keep in mind, this could also be a compliance issue in accordance with the regulations if the last hazardous waste notification received listed that person as the site contact and an HW1 notification update was never submitted to us. So now the next few slides will only pertain to certifiers and site managers. You will be prompted to complete the electronic signature agreement and prove your identity. You will not be able to submit and sign unless this process is complete. So you want to enter your personal information to complete the online verification, which is the default choice and is the quickest method to be verified. You will either be approved or denied immediately by RCRA Info. I do also want to mention, do not use nicknames. The system is going to look at your legal name, so don't use a shorter name or your employer's address, because RCRA will deny you. You want to check that you agree and verify and sign. If you aren't approved and would like to try electronic identity proofing again, give us a call or email and we can update your profile to allow another attempt. If you decide to opt in for the paper-based option, you will need to mail in the original form with an original wetting signature to LDEQ. It will pre-populate the table with the information from the registration process. So if you don't want to enter your personal information and get the electronic approval, you do have the option of submitting the paper version. If you have been approved to be a site manager and have been verified, RCRA Info will prompt you to opt into electronic signature agreement management. This will allow you to receive paper e-signature agreements from personnel affiliated with your connected sites. It will default to no. So if you want to opt in, slide the bar to yes. And all the required information pre-populates with the information you gave in the registration process. Confirm that you agree, and then save and continue. So now we'll go over completing the report. The Overview tab gives an overview of all outstanding reports and requests for facilities that you have permissions for. The site name will only be a hyperlink if you have permissions to access that type of report. For instance, if you only have biennial report permissions, you would not be able to access the annual report permissions. So the site name would not be a hyperlink. The current status of the report is shown under the action item column. You can see that the facilities have reports that are awaiting submission. Once a user starts to prepare a report, it will remain in a draft or ready for signature status until it's certified. The My Sites tab lists your sites and the permission statuses. If your permissions have been approved, it will show active. This will take you to the dashboard to work or view the reports. Now, this is the main dashboard for a site. In this example, we have access to the biennial report, annual report, and e-manifest because we were approved as a site manager. If you only registered as a viewer of the biennial report, you will not see the e-manifest or the annual reporting tabs. If any of this pre-populated information is incorrect, you can update it in the SI form. You want to click on the biennial reporting tab since this is a biennial reporting year. If there is a pending report, you will not see the Create New Submission green button. RCRA info will not allow you to start another report in the same module if there is one pending, meaning if a 2023 biennial report was submitted and has not been reviewed and accepted, you will not see this button. After clicking Create New Submission, if this box pops up, you are in the annual reporting module and will not be able to submit the 2025 biennial report. Remember, there's two modules, annual and biennial. You want to click Close and choose the biennial reporting tab instead. So now we'll go over the BR exempt option. Before going into full details of submitting the report, I want to briefly discuss the BR exempt option that is prompted by clicking the Click Here hyperlink. The exempt option indicates that the facility is exempt from submitting the complete biennial report for the current cycle. However, you still have to submit the SI form to indicate your current regulatory status. In prior cycles, facilities that did not generate waste may have submitted reports including an SI form with a comment stating no waste generated during the reporting year. BR exempt is the same concept, requiring a comment in the SI form. Once you click the Click Here hyperlink, it will send you straight to the SI form without the additional federal form requirements. As a reminder, if you choose the exempt option, but the facility is not exempt and you need to add the additional forms, you cannot go back and add the forms in the same submission. You need to delete the submission and start over by creating a new submission. If you click to upload a file, it will prompt you to upload a zip file with the GM and WR form data or continue to data entry. If you choose to upload the data, the OI form and SI form will need to be completed manually. For this example, we will not upload and just continue to data entry. You also have the option to use the GM data from the most recent reporting cycle. If you do bring forward data, you will still need to complete some sections of the GM form manually. For this example, we will not bring forward any previous data. So now we'll go over the forms. The SI form is used to fulfill the re-notification requirement of large quantity generators. The information should pertain to the current status of the facility. The GM, WR, and OI forms describe the hazardous waste and how it was managed from the reporting year. Waste notifications and reporting cannot give you specifics on how to classify your waste or your facility's regulated hazardous waste activities. If you have questions, you can contact the Surveillance Regional Office for your facility. The Generation and Management form. This is used for reporting on-site hazardous waste generation and management and off-site shipment in the reporting year. You want to click Add New GM Form. And for section A, you need a short explanation of the waste, the general type, source, type of hazard, and generic chemical name of the waste. If the section cannot fit all the characters in the section A, add the remainder of the description in the GM comment section. For section B, just list the selected hazardous waste federal codes. And you'll enter the additional waste information, the source code, form code, waste minimization code, and quantity and unit of measurement. Also remember, volumetric measurements only require the density and density units. If you have any on-site generation and management information, you'll enter that data. And again, remember the unit of measurement will pre-populate what was chosen in section H earlier. If there's any off-site shipment information, you'll enter that data as well. To add off-site facilities, you can search by the site ID, the name, or the location. Off-site facility information will pre-populate when you make a choice. If the quantity generated doesn't match the quantity managed on-site or shipped off-site, then RCRA info will prompt you to review the quantity. If there is a discrepancy in the quantities, add a comment describing why. So meaning if you shipped off a certain amount of waste, if you generated a certain amount of waste, but you didn't ship all of that waste off-site during that reporting year, and you're waiting until that following year, 2026, then there should be a quantity discrepancy. So you would list the reason why. In this instance, 5 gallons was not shipped off by December 31st, 2025. The 5 gallons will be shipped off in 2026. You'll save the information. And the GM form page data is now summarized in the table. You can print, edit, or delete each page of the GM form using the icons under Action. Repeat these steps to add as many times as needed. The OI form pre-populates with the information listed in the GM form for the receiving facilities. So now we'll go into the waste received from offsite form, WR form. This identifies hazardous waste that were received from other hazardous waste sites and the methods used to manage them. You'll add new WR form. And similar to the GM form for section A, a short explanation of the waste, the general type, source, type of hazard, and generic chemical name of the waste. And you will also select the waste codes. And you can search using the site ID or the site name, city, and state for the off-site handler or the generator. It will pre-populate search results and make a choice by clicking on the blue site ID. It will pre-populate the information on the WR form. You'll enter the additional information as far as codes and management, quantities, and save. The WR form page data is now summarized in the table. You can print, edit, or delete each page of the WR form using the icons under Action. Repeat these steps to add as many times as needed. An OI form pre-populates the generator information listed in the WR form. So now the offsite identification form. This documents the name and addresses of all offsite generators, receiving facilities, and transporters that were used during the reporting year. RCRA info will automatically input receiving facilities and generating facilities, but transporters will need to be entered manually. RCRA info will not remind you to add the transporters since not all states require this information. However, Louisiana requires transporter information. This is the #1 reason Louisiana facility reports are rejected. I can say right now, at least half of the reports that have been submitted have been rejected because they are missing the transporters. So please remember, Louisiana does require transporters to be listed on your reports. You cannot search for the transporter in this form, so make sure the EPA ID number for the transporter is correct. If the EPA ID number is valid, it will pre-populate the information for the transporter and ensure you choose the correct type of activity, transporter. Save. And repeat these steps to add as many transporters as needed. Like the other forms, you can print, edit, or delete each page of the OI form using the icons under the action column. Site identification form. This describes the facility's regulated hazardous waste activities at the time of completion and lists contacts and ownership operatorship information. You'll add the site ID form. The SI form will already include the information for the facility from the most recent submittal. Make sure that the information is correct and up to date. For section 3, this is the site name. Section 4 is the site location. If the site has moved to a new address, you may need to open a new EPA ID number because EPA ID numbers are site specific and do not move to new locations. Section 5 is the site mailing address. Section 6, site land type. Section 7, the NAICS code. You can add multiple codes if necessary. If you're unsure what codes are best suited for your facility, you can search using the keywords. Or if you only remember some of the numbers, you can search using the numbers. Section 8 is the site contact. This is who we will contact to inquire about issues with the report, so ensure the information is accurate and up to date. If the report is rejected, RCRA will send an auto-generated email to the certifier and the site manager, but we will also include the site contact in a detailed follow-up email. I also want to mention, please let whoever you're listing as the site contact know that they are listed as a site contact. There have been a few times where I contacted a site contact and they had no idea that they were listed as a site contact. So please inform them that they are the site contact. For section 9, you want to list your legal owner facility, the legal owner of the property, and the legal operator. If an owner or operator needs to be added, click on the Add button and fill in the information. Either an email or a phone number is required. If you're adding the property owner, please note that in the comments. And you can copy the information from other areas of the SI form by clicking on the Copy From at the top right of the window. You'll save the changes and do as many times as needed. Section 10 is the regulated hazardous waste activities. This is for the regulated waste activity and select what best describes the current generator status of the facility. Do not mark what the facility was during the reporting year. Section 11 is a continuation of the type of regulated hazardous waste activities. You just select what applies to the facility activities. Louisiana has not opted into eligible academic entities with laboratories listed in Section 12, but we have in December 2025 opted into the pharmaceutical activities. So if you need to make any updates, you can include this information within your report to update the facility info. If the facility has consolidated waste from very small quantity generators that are owned by the same entity, Section 14 will need to be completed. To add the very small quantity generator, add and input the very small quantity generator's information. Remember to enter the EPA ID number for the VSQG if applicable. RCRA info will not remind you since not all states require very small quantity generators to have an EPA ID number. You cannot search for the EPA ID number in this section, so make sure you're entering the correct EPA ID number. Section 15, a facility can notify of a large quantity generator site closure using the hazardous waste annual report. However, a hard copy of the form and the required cover letter, including the additional information per Louisiana Administrative Code Title 33, Part 5, Chapter 1015 B8B, must be submitted to fulfill the initial notification of closure. You do not have to complete Section 15 for the annual report. However, if you are using the annual report to close the large quantity generator facility, you must adhere to the LQG closure regulations. So even if you submit this information electronically, we're going to need that hard copy to include the cover letter to notify of closure. For Section 16, this is the notification of hazardous secondary material activities. You'll click yes and enter all of the required information for HSM. Add all the additional codes. Save your changes. Now, once you've completed the SI form, you'll review it. If there is missing information, RCRA info will scroll to that section. If there are no outstanding issues, RCRA info will scroll back to the top so you can double check that the information is correct. Scroll to the bottom and review. Click the review button. Click save. And RCRA info will take you back to the main working page, and a small summary table will show up. You can edit or print the SI form using the icons under the action column. So the validation feature was implemented in the RCRA info reporting modules and pulls some of the information from manifest and TSD facility hazardous waste management activities and compares the data in your report. Before you can sign and send the report, RCRA will validate the data. You'll click the validate button. Now, validations are categorized by errors and warnings. If the validation triggers an error, you must correct the data before you can proceed. You will not be able to mark your submission ready for signature or sign and submit until this is complete. If the validation triggers a warning, you may either correct the data if it's an error so that the warning is no longer triggered, or you can provide an explanation indicating why the data is not an error. As you can see, this report has several warnings. Since this feature was implemented for the 2023 biennial reporting year, the EPA has made a few changes to provide more details and clarity to the issues triggered. If you notice, quantity discrepancies now include the quantities. EPA ID number discrepancies now include the EPA ID number. And management method code issues now include the code. And you can see in parentheses towards the end of the validation issue. All explanations are required to be filled in to submit the report. You'll provide the validation explanations. Once the report is submitted, the explanations will be reviewed by LDEQ. If the explanations are not satisfactory, we will ask for additional information Per the EPA, some validation issues will not be accepted with an explanation. Those validation issues must be resolved. The next slide is another example of validation results if the report does not have a lot of issues. The issue listed is the previous cycle's biennial report for your site does not exist in RCRA info. In this case, the warning was triggered because the facility didn't report for 2023. This may have been because they weren't registered as a large quantity generator during that reporting year, or maybe they just didn't submit a report. Because a 2023 report does not exist, RCRA will prompt this validation issue. Once the explanation is given, you'll submit. This last example includes no validation issues, and you'll just sign and submit. So now you've entered all of the data for the reporting year. It's been validated, and now it's time to certify and submit. If you have a preparer, or if you are a preparer, you cannot send the submission to the regulator. Once the submission is complete and ready for signature, click Mark Ready for Signature. On the dashboard, the report status will change from draft to ready for signature. This will indicate the signatory that the report is ready to be sent. RCRA Info will send an email to all the certifiers and all the site managers for that site. Remember, if the report is prepared and not certified, we cannot access it to review. You'll click Sign and Submit, Accept, enter your credentials and log in. Sign. Now, once submitted, it will return to the Biennial Report tab. The In Progress table will be filled in with a summary of the data from the report, and the status column now says Submitted. If you hover and click on the word Submitted, it will show you when and who last updated the report. RCRA Info will send the certifier an email when the report is submitted and when the report has been accepted. However, if there are any issues with the report, RCRA Info and the DEQ staff will send an email that states that the report was rejected and the reason for the rejection. If the report has been rejected, it will need to be resubmitted with the corrections. Now, this ends the electronic submittal portion of the webinar. Next, my colleague, Catherine Cooper, will begin the paper submittal using the HW1 form.
Now we will go into the details to submit the hard copy of the annual report to LDEQ. Ensure you are using the most recent version of the HW1, which was updated in December of 2025. There is a link to the HW1 form on the DEQ Hazardous Waste webpage. If you generated or received waste, or if the generated waste was transported from your facility, you will have to use the federal GM, OI, and WR forms as well. We will review the federal forms later. Section 1 is the reason for submittal, and only one option should be marked. Provide initial notification is used when a facility is submitting to obtain an EPA ID number for the first time. To provide subsequent notification is used when a facility is updating information or re-notifying. As a component of the annual hazardous waste report for reporting year is used when submitting the hazardous waste annual report, and the reporting year should be indicated. The site was a TSD and our generator box should be marked if it applies to the facility. Submittal of a new Part A form and submittal of a revised Part A form is for hazardous waste permits. The last option to provide a notification of LQG site closure for a central accumulation area or entire facility is used when submitting to close an LQG. Again, if you want to use this form for the annual report, then you must mark the corresponding box for that option. Also ensure you are listing the correct reporting year. If the facility was a TSD or a large quantity generator, then this box will need to be marked. Most facilities that should be submitting the report should mark this box. This EPA ID number box will be located at the top of each page. Add your EPA ID on each page. Section 2, EPA ID. Make sure this is your correct 12-digit number. Section 3, legal name. List the current legal name. Section 4, site location. This is the physical address of the facility. Longitude and latitude coordinates can be used here as well. Section 5, site mailing address. If this matches the site location, then mark the box and leave the section blank. Section 6, site land type. Section 7, NAICS. You must have at least one valid 6-digit code. Section 8, site contact person. List the contact that can answer inquiries about any issues on the form and ensure their contact information is accurate. Section 9, legal owners and operator. Legal owner of the facility is who owns the business. Legal owner of the property is who owns the land. Legal operator is who runs the business. List the most accurate owners and operator information. If the legal owner of the property and legal operator matches the owner of the facility, you can mark the same as box instead of listing the information. The dates must be complete and in month, day, year format. Section 10, hazardous waste billing party. This section should list who should receive the hazardous waste annual invoices from LDEQ. Section 11, type of regulated waste activity for current activities. Section 11A1, generator of hazardous waste. This section is describing the current generator status of the facility. A2, if yes is marked a short-term generator, you must provide details in section 19 comments. A3, if marking yes, do you have a hazardous waste permit? If not, are you really a TSD? For section A4, if the facility receives waste from off-site, mark yes. Section 11A5, recycle of hazardous waste. If yes is marked for this section, then section 11A4, receives hazardous waste from off-site, must be marked yes. For section A6, exempt boiler and/or industrial furnace, mark yes for all options that apply to the facility. Section 11B, generators must list valid federal waste codes. If you need more space for codes, add an additional page or use the comments section. Section 12, additional regulated waste activities. If any of these sections apply to your facility, mark yes. A1B, if yes is marked, do you have the approval? Provide details in the comments section. B2, if yes is marked, do you have approval? Section C, 12C, used oil activities. C1B, if yes is marked, does the facility have approval? Details must be provided in the comments section. Section 12D, pharmaceutical activities. Louisiana opted into this activity in December 2025, but large quantity generators should not have a need to operate under this program. Section 13, eligible academic entities with labs. Louisiana has not adopted this activity. Section 14, episodic generation should not be completed because episodic generation is not an activity used by large quantity generators. Waste from approved episodic generations should not be reported on the annual report. If you mark yes for section 15, then the addendum to the site ID form, LQG consolidation of a VSQG hazardous waste must be completed. Section 16, Notification of LQG site closure. As stated earlier, a facility can notify of an LQG site closure using the hazardous waste annual report. However, the LQG closure regulations must be followed and required documents submitted. If section 17 is marked yes, then addendum A should be completed. Section 18 is electronic manifest broker. Section 19, add the comments here if the facility did not generate any hazardous waste, but was registered as a large quantity generator. If the facility transfer facilities and short-term generators are also required to include a comment detailing the activities. If you are making any changes to the facility information, list the details here. Section 20, the HW1 form will not be accepted without an original wet ink signature and complete signature date. A certifier must be an authorized representative responsible for the overall operation of the site or an operational unit. Only one signature is needed on the form. The required signature should be in section 20A. Since section 20B is referencing part A, permitting documents, no should be marked and the certification statement is complete. If sections 20C and 20D are marked and signed, we will request an amendment. Addendum A, complete this page if section 17 is marked yes. Include a complete date in section 1 and complete all of section 2. Here are some examples of the HSM facility codes. Here are the land-based unit codes. I also would like to mention that within the chart, we also have notes stating to contact DEQ for facility codes and land-based codes. The codes listed within the RCRA subtitle C instructions are the same codes that LDEQ would provide to you. Addendum B, episodic generation. Episodic generation is not an activity used by large quantity generators. If you marked yes in section 15, complete addendum C. VSQGs should have an EPA ID number in Louisiana. Kenneth Edwards will now begin the 8700-12 form portion of the webinar.
All right. Moving on to the RCRA subtitle C reporting forms. The EPA updated the federal form as of September 2025, and the current form should list an expiration date of August 31st, 2028. So ensure you're using the most recent version of the form. All right, the HW1 form is based off the site identification form, so you'll notice that most of the information will be very similar. Similar to the HW1 form, section 1 of the site ID form has multiple options for reason for submittal. If you want to use this form for the annual report, then you must check the corresponding box for that option. And ensure that you are listing the correct reporting year. If the facility was a TSD or an LQG, this box should be marked. And for section 2, EPA ID number, make sure that this is your correct 12-digit number. List the AI number next to the EPA ID number, and then section 3 is just your legal site name. Section 4, site location address. This is the physical address of the facility. Section 5, site mailing address. If this matches the location, then just mark the box and leave the section blank. Section 6, mark the correct box for site land type. And for section 7 and AICS codes, you must have at least one valid 6-digit code. Also, you can see there's a place to input page numbers. Add the page numbers to keep the form in order. At the top of every page, please fill in your EPA ID number. For section 8, if the site contact address is the same as the location address, then mark this box. This box does not add the email, name, and phone number. It only copies the address. So make sure that this is the best contact person for any hazardous waste questions. All right. Section 9, legal owner and operator of site should include the most accurate owner and operator. If the legal owner does not match the legal property owner, then the property owner should be listed in Section 18 comments. If they do match, make a note in the owner comment section in Section 9A. If the legal owner and or the legal operator addresses match the facility's address, you can mark the box instead of inputting the address. The box will only copy the address, so the name and contact info still needs to be listed. If the owner/operator addresses do not match the facility, then those sections need to be completed fully. The dates should be completed and in a month, day, year format. All right, Section 10, type of regulated waste activity. Section 10A1, generator of hazardous waste. This section is describing the current status of the facility. Recently, the EPA added an additional option to differentiate between federal and state generator statuses for states that have alternative thresholds for hazardous waste. Louisiana does not differentiate between federal and state generator status, and yes should be marked for the state status section. A site in the state of Louisiana cannot be multiple generator statuses at the same time. All right, for A2, if yes is marked, a short-term generator must provide details in Section 18 comments. For A3 through 5, if marking yes, do you have a hazardous waste permit? If yes is marked for Section 10A5, recycler of hazardous waste, yes must be marked for Section 10A4, receives hazardous waste from offsite. For Section A6, mark yes for all options that apply to the facility. All right, Section 10B, list waste codes, and if you need more space, add an additional page or use the comment section. For 10C, Louisiana does not have state hazardous waste codes. Section 11A, other waste activities, and 11B, universal waste activities. If any of these activities apply to the facility, mark yes. If yes is marked for A, 1B, or B2, again, do you have permitting approval? For Section 11C, used oil activities, if any of these activities apply to the facility, mark yes. If yes is marked for C1B, again, do you have permitting approval? For Section 11D, pharmaceutical activities, Louisiana recently adopted the Subpart P regulations. However, LQGs shouldn't have a need to operate under these activities. For Section 12, eligible academic entities with laboratories, Louisiana has not adopted the Subpart K activities. Section 13, episodic generation should not be completed because episodic generation is not an activity used by large quantity generators. Waste from an approved episodic generation should not be reported on the annual report. If you mark yes for Section 14, then you must complete the addendum to the site ID form, LQG, consolidation of VSQG hazardous waste. You do not have to complete Section 15 for the annual report, but again, if you're using the annual report to notify of LQG closure, the LQG closure regulations must be followed. If yes is marked for Section 16, notifications of hazardous secondary material or HSM activity, then you must complete addendum to the site ID form, notification of hazardous waste secondary material activity. Section 17, electronic manifest broker. For Section 18, comment section, add the comments here if the facility did not generate any hazardous waste but was registered as a large quantity generator. Transfer facilities and short-term generators are also required to include a comment detailing the activities. All right. The form will not be accepted without an original wet ink signature and complete signature date. Only one signature is needed for the annual report. An additional contacts page is available if needed. The EPA has included multiple options for contact type for the Appendix A use only. All right, complete this page if yes was marked in Section 16. You must list a complete date for Section 1 and complete Section 2. Here are some examples of HSM facility codes. And here are some examples of land-based unit codes. All right, section 13, episodic generation. Again, episodic generation is not an activity used by large quantity generators. If yes was marked in section 14, then complete the LQG consolidation addendum. The SQGs should have an EPA ID number in Louisiana. All right, for the GM form, it is up to the facility to determine the waste codes and descriptions of the waste activities. All right, remember to list your facility's EPA ID number at the top of the page. And for 1A, waste description, an explanation of the waste, the general type, source, type of hazard, and generic chemical name. For 1B, EPA hazardous waste code. This is a 4-digit code that applies to the waste. For 1D, only one source code per GM form. If you use G25, treatment, disposal, recycling code, then you must insert the management method code. Otherwise, leave it blank. If you use G26, received waste from outside the US, then you must insert the code for the country which sent you the waste. Otherwise, leave it blank. For 1E, only one form code per GM form. For 1F, waste minimization codes. 1G, yes or no, must be marked. For 1H, unit of measurement, we can only accept these unit of measurement codes. You only have to complete the density section if you choose volumetric unit of measurement codes 5, 6, or 7. Don't forget to mark the unit of measurement for the density. Number 2, did you treat on site? If yes, list the management method code and quantity. Number 3, did you ship off-site? If yes, list the EPA ID number of receiving facility, select the management method code they used, and quantity that was shipped to them. Most of the info needed should be listed on the manifest. All right, here's some code examples. For number 3B, make sure the EPA ID number actually exists and is 12 characters. You will need this information for the OI form. If the quantity generation noted in section 1H does not match the quantity treated in section 2 or the quantity shipped off, then explain the discrepancy in the comment section. The page numbers restart for the GM form. So if you need 3 GM forms, then your pages should be 1 of 3, 2 of 3, and 3 of 3. All right, this is for the WR form. List your facility's EPA ID number at the top of the page. This is similar to the GM form, but you're listing the EPA ID number of the generating facility in 1D. And the page numbers restart for the WR form as well. All right, this is the OI form. List your facility's EPA ID number at the top of the page. Review your manifests for this information. For section 1C, do not forget to mark the correct classification. It is rare that the same EPA ID number will be a transporter and a generator. And again, the page numbers restart for the OI form. And this concludes the instructions on the hazardous waste annual report paper submittal process. Again, electronic submittals using the RCRA info reporting module are highly encouraged, but we will continue to accept paper submissions as well. All right, the next slides include contact information and helpful resources. The waste notifications and reporting group will be the best resource if you have any questions. Everyone within this group has access to the email listed below. And please use the parish of the facility's physical location to determine the surveillance regional office. And here are surveillance regional office's phone numbers and emails. If you are classified as a small business, the Small Business Assistance Program is another resource. And please note that the SBA program regions are different from the surveillance regions. And here are some other helpful online resources. NAICS website, links to state and federal forms and info, and EDMS if you would like to review past submissions. And to finish it off, Jennifer.
All right, so we'll now discuss a few reminders. Hopefully, if you keep these in mind, a lot of your reports will not be rejected. Remember, reports are due by March 1st, 2026. If you need access to a site, do not wait until the due date to request permissions because you'll have to wait for access before you can submit. So ensure you're requesting within enough time to meet that reporting deadline. If you start an electronic submission and you decide to send a hard copy, the electronic submission must be deleted on your end before we can enter the report. Louisiana requires all transporters used during the reporting year to be listed on the OI form. I'm going to repeat that one more time. Louisiana requires your transporters. So please remember to list those within your report. Your reports will be rejected if you're missing your transporters. If the report is rejected or you request DEQ to send a report back for edits, the reporting requirements have not been fulfilled until we receive the report again and accept it. Your current generator status at the time you are completing the report should be marked, not the generator status during the reporting year. If at some point during the reporting year an HW1 form was submitted dropping your status from LQG to SQG or VSQG, and then you submit the report later marking LQG, this will change your generator status back to LQG. Usually I try to catch those and reach out to facilities, but just be mindful, if you've dropped down at some point in time during 2025, and then you submit that report and you mark LQG, you will be moving your status back up to LQG. So remember to mark the current status, whatever you are when you are entering that data for the report. Mark that status. As far as validation issues, they cannot be circumvented by sending a hard copy of the report. So for instance, if you submit an electronic report and validation issues are triggered, if you submit that hard copy to us, you cannot get around those validation issues. If we have validation issues with the hard copy, we will still reach out for an explanation. Satisfactory explanation. If the facility did not generate any waste during the reporting year, the BR exempt option will be the easiest way to report electronically because you're just going to click that hyperlink. It's going to wipe out those additional federal forms. It's going to require you to add a comment. So it will trigger that and catch you not adding it if you try to bypass it. So that's the easiest way. If you don't generate waste and you just submit the regular way and you don't choose the BR exempt option, that's fine as well. You still will have to add the comment, did not generate waste during the reporting year. Now, also, a validation issue will probably trigger because it's going to be expecting GM forms and WR forms, but that will be the same information that you would list as far as the validation explanation. Site did not generate waste during 2025 reporting year. If you have any validation issues such as an invalid TSDF ID or TSDF IDs are not associated with the management method codes that you list, these validation issues must be resolved. You cannot list an explanation. Per the EPA, we have to resolve those. So your reports will be rejected if you send that report through with an explanation. It will be sent back to you. Since the validation feature was implemented, all of the reports that we've reviewed that have had management method code issues was a result of the TSDF providing an incorrect management method code. So just keep in mind, if you do get those validation issues, try and get those resolved before you submit, because it will be sent back to you and rejected. For hard copy submissions, ensure the quantities generated and the quantity shipped matches on the GM forms. Since you don't have the advantage of RCRA info catching those discrepancies, you want to make sure you're looking at your GM forms and ensuring that those quantities match up. Now, if the discrepancy is accurate, list a comment in the GM form comment section, the same as you would if you were submitting electronically. We will reach out if there are any discrepancies within the forms, even if it's a hard copy, and expect a correction. So now we will move on to the question and answer session. Remember to note the specific form and/or section in your question, and please use the question and answers button to submit your questions.
Thanks, Jennifer, Catherine, and Ken, and thanks for participating in this LDEQ webinar, everyone. Before you log off, in case you don't have any questions, please complete the poll that is on your screen now.